Hey, what's going on, everybody? So today we're going to go over a starter Witch Doctor build, and it's been, probably 6 months or longer since I put out a starter guide. So I figured with the recent updates and with Season 2 starting in a week, it was a good time to put out a new video as a reference point, mainly for new players. It's going to benefit them the most, but also even players that have been, playing the Witch Doctor and Diablo for a good while. The majority of these players will have been running, Jade or some kind of set bonus for a good bit, so it's always nice to brush up on how to play your class without set bonuses. And because you're going to be doing that for at least a couple days when the season first drops. Maybe you'll get really lucky and get all your Jade pieces really quickly, or you'll get a star medal really fast or something like that. But more than likely, it's going to be at least a few days that you'll be playing without 4-piece Zuni or 6-piece Jade. So to simulate what it's going to be like when Season 2 first drops, we're going to be running just rares and crafted legendaries in this video. The only exception to that is the Ring of Royal Grandeur, which you can target farm pretty easily now. In Torment 6, you have a 100% chance to drop a legendary out of a bounty bag, and I believe it's 50% chance on Torment 2. So within the first couple of days, you should be able to get a Ring of Royal Grandeur. Maybe not one this good, but you'll be able to get one to get your set bonuses for the crafted sets. And then we're also going to be running just kind of mid-tier gems, because obviously you're not going to have the 280 main stat gems when the season first drops. And we're going to run just 50 Paragon points in each tree, core, offense, defense, utility, to simulate that as well. Let's take a look at the spec. It's really pretty standard, a spec that, we've been running a variation of for a very long time as Witch Doctors. The biggest strength of the Witch Doctor class before they get their set bonuses is Fetish Sycophants. This is just very strong, and with the addition of ancient weapons, it gets even better without your set bonuses and before you get your Mask of Jerem and your Tasker and Theos and things like that. So we're going to be running Reign of Toads to summon fetishes from the passive as quickly as possible, and that's going to be our main damage dealing ability. We're going to be running Haunt Poison Spirit, mainly just for the extra 20% damage from all sources. This is going to buff our pets quite a bit, and we're also going to be running a Bane of the Trapped legendary gem, which this will proc since Haunt slows everything. Piranha's Paranado to pull everything together also gives us more damage, and it's very good in tandem with Plague of Toads to summon the fetishes very quick. Spirit Walk Jaunt gets us out of bad situations, especially early on when your gear isn't amazing and you don't have a ton of toughness, and also gives us movement speed. Fetish Army Legion of Daggers. We're going to be running this as a cooldown in the build. Now obviously, once you get a Star Metal Kukri or 4-piece Zuni, this is going to be much better, but even still, it's quite good as just a cooldown for elites and champions and bosses. Big Bad Voodoo Slam Dance. Pretty self-explanatory one, just to buff our pets, mainly drop it against elites, champions, and bosses as well. Pierce the Veil for more damage, Fierce Loyalty for more movement speed, Fetish Sycophants like we talked about, and then Grave Injustice mostly for the cooldown reduction. But the life is definitely not irrelevant. The mana, we don't really need too much mana in this build. The only ability that really consumes it would be the Haunt, but for the most part, mana is a non-issue. Alright, so gear-wise. Now keep in mind, this is a build that you can run up into Greater Rifts in T6 very easily. We're going to be running T6 a little bit in this video with this gear. So once you get really good gear like a Mask of Jerem, Tasker and Theos, and a bunch of better items, you should be able to just rock T6 with this exact setup if you want to. But the biggest thing is get a ancient weapon, whether you need to craft one or you get a drop. It doesn't really matter early on what the weapon is, just as long as it's ancient, because the ancient weapons, their damage rolls much higher. Now this isn't a great roll on this Born's Furious Wrath, but it's good enough, and we're also getting that 3-piece bonus. We get the 15% life from the 2-piece, and the 3-piece bonus is quite nice early on when you're Paragon leveling. Get that extra bonus experience. So we're also going to be running the Born's Frozen Soul chest, and then the Ring of Royal Grandeur like we talked about before to get that 3-piece bonus. We're also going to be running Kane's set. So we've got the Kane's boots, And then we also have the Kane's gloves that are trifecta. This is also a really nice one early on. The 2-piece bonus, the attack speed, is going to mean that you're going to summon fetishes quicker with Reign of Toads, and it's also going to buff your pets. Attack speed directly buffs your pet's damage. And then the 3-piece bonus is pretty nice also, leveling up early on. You get Magic Find, and you get 50% increased bonus experience for that Paragon grinding. We're also going to run the Augilds set. So we've got the shoulders up here. Now obviously, if you can craft them as ancient, that's best case scenario. And with a build like this with so many crafted items, you should be able to get them crafted ancient relatively quickly, which is going to boost your damage and your toughness by a lot. Definitely want to get Fetish Army damage on the shoulders if you can, and Intelligence, Vitality, and then the 4th stat you can go cooldown reduction, or you can go something like life percentage or something along those lines. We've also got the Augilds Bracers. Definitely roll physical damage. We're pretty much doing all physical damage in this build for the most part. Even though Reign of Toads and Haunt are poison, these are really just here to A, summon fetishes, which deal physical damage from the passive, and buff those fetishes. So Legion of Daggers is physical, and Fetish Sycophants is also physical. So we got physical damage there. Intelligence and crit chance are definitely a must on this, and ideally you want to have vitality over the all resist on this piece, but that's not really that big of a deal there. So we're running a Fleeting Strap, which is a crafted legendary belt. Gives you attack speed, which again, like we talked about, buffs your pets, so it's pretty nice. It's a nice one until you get something better. There's a ton of legendary belts that you'll be able to drop that'll be better than this, but it's not bad by any means. We're running just rare pants, intelligence, vitality. Make sure you get 2 sockets on it, and then armor is fine or something along those lines. As far as the helmet goes, just make sure you have crit chance, your main stat, and a socket. Now with the socket, I like cooldown reduction at the moment. With the amount of toughness that I have, I don't really need a life percentage gem, but you can go that route if you'd like to. But the cooldown reduction is extremely good, like we've already talked about with Fetish Army and Big Bad Voodoo Slam Dance. We've also got just a rare ring here. Pretty important to get crit chance, crit damage, and a socket if you can. If you can't get a socket, attack speed's fine. Early on, there's a good chance you may only have 1 to 2 sockets for legendary gems, and that's totally fine. Just other damage stats can replace them. I mean, even a ring that has int, vitality, crit chance, and crit damage early on will be good enough. So we're also running just a rare mojo. Now, as soon as you possibly can, you want to get an ancient legendary mojo, because the damage on those also rolls much higher since it's ancient, just like the weapons. And really, again, with this build, any mojo is fine, just like any weapon is fine. Now, obviously, a weapon that has some sort of legendary effect to it is going to be better, but the fact that it's ancient is the most important thing, and that's the same principle with the mojo there. Alright, lastly, the amulet. So it's got physical damage, which again buffs our fetishes, intelligence, crit damage, crit chance. Ideally, you would have a socket instead of either the main stat or the physical damage, but early on, it's not really that big of a deal to have 3 legendary gems. A lot of the legendary gems for this build aren't really even that good until they're ranked 25. Pain Enhancer comes to mind. It's one of the best legendary gems for this setup, but it's really not that great until it's ranked 25. So just having 2 sockets, and even just 1 socket for legendary gems on your jewelry early on is not that big of a deal. So that brings us to the legendary gems we're running. We've got the Enforcer, increases pet damage of your pets, and this one isn't great when you're running a Mask of Jerem because it stacks additively with the percentage pet damage from the Mask of Jerem, but until you get that mask, it's very good. And again, that's why this is good in Carnival and things like that, because you're not running Mask of Jerem. So early on, very good for the build. And then also Bane of the Trapped, it's a damage multiplier. So even though it's not ranked up, it still does a ton of damage for us. And we're, like we talked about earlier, we're running Haunt, which slows everything. We're going to be spamming Haunt on the majority of targets. So we're going to get this extra damage quite a bit. Alright, so Paragon-wise, again, we're just spending 50 points in each tree. So we have 10% movement speed on our boots, so we got 15%, and then went Intelligence after that. And then offense-wise, you want to make sure you get 50% chance to crit for your pets. So we needed 2.5 crit, and then went crit damage. And then after that, if you have that many Paragon points, go attack speed next. Defense-wise, went all into armor percentage first, then we will be going life percentage next. Utility-wise, life on hit, and then we're going to go area damage next. Resource cost reduction is pretty irrelevant. You could also, put points in gold find, since it is going to be early on in the season when you're running this setup. If you are, hurting on gold, potentially. Alright, so let's go ahead and go into T6 and kill some mobs to show you guys that even with this early gear, you can do T6. For the most part, you want to make sure you have out at least 10 to 15 fetishes at all times from the passive. So before you start haunting a bunch, definitely Reign of Toads a good bit to get that fetish pull up. So we've got an elite pack here. Make sure you pair NATO them and get haunts on them for that extra damage. And then just pop the Big Bad Voodoo and Legion of Daggers. And I mean, they died really pretty fast with all that stuff up. Like for T6 and the gear level, that's really, I'm pretty happy with that for the most part. Now, as far as being really efficient farming, you're probably going to want to be running like Torment 4, which we'll drop it down to here in just a minute. But, this is really not bad for T6, and with a few upgrades, you'd be able to farm Torment 6 really, really efficiently. A Mask of Jerem obviously would help quite a bit. Even a Grin Reaper, which kind of brings me to my next point. Definitely you want to gamble helmets with Kadala when the season first starts. There's a lot of decent, just generic helmets that you can get, legendary ones, but also there's a ton of good voodoo masks. Grin Reaper is very common and will buff your damage. Mask of Jerem obviously would be a huge damage upgrade, and you can get some other build-enabling helmets like Quetzalcoatl and Carnival as well. So we'll go ahead and drop it down to Torment 4 now. Again, T6 really wasn't too bad, but for being very efficient with this current gear, I don't think you'd be running T6. T4, T5 makes a little bit more sense to me. So we got another champion pack here. We'll see how fast this dies on Torment 4. There's a few other things that you could definitely get early on, like a little bit better of an Ancient One-Hander would buff the damage quite a bit, and obviously an Ancient Mojo would be really, really good too. We'll kind of just go through here and kill some more trash and packs. Honestly, elite and champion packs and bosses with a build like this, it's really, really good single target damage, or if there's just 2 or 3 mobs, with the fetishes just deal a ton of single target damage. When there's, 15 or 20 white mobs, it tends to be a little bit slower. Now in Torment 4, especially with everything being haunted and taking dot damage and things like that as well, you don't notice that as much, but in Torment 6, you start to see the trash not dying as quickly with this current gear. So there you go, guys. Hopefully it helps out some newer players and even some seasoned veteran Diablo and Witch Doctor players. It's always a good idea to brush up on how to play your class without set items and in-game legendaries, and that will give you an edge a little bit when Season 2 first drops to know what you're doing to efficiently farm until you get those in-game sets like your 6-piece Jade and 4-piece Zuni, or a Star Metal Kukri, etc. So anyways, guys, as always, thank you very much for watching, and I will see you next time, and don't forget to like and subscribe.